Before you sit down, I want you to think about, for a moment, just think about the stuff you have in your closets, in your storerooms, in your storage garages, and I want you to think of one thing that you can't believe you still own. And I want you to turn and share that with a neighbor, all right? Right now. Go ahead. All right. Did you hear some good stuff? It's amazing, isn't it? You know, here a year or two ago, Kevin did a series of messages in the sanctuary about one word. And he encouraged everybody to have their one word for the year that would be kind of their word between them and God to pray about it. It was an interesting thing. And so our family has continued to do this, and we talk about our one word. So this year I was praying about my one word, and any of you read my blog, I blogged about it. My word this year is empty. And when God gave me that word, I'm like, really? Empty. So I've been wrestling with this word. And I've been wrestling now. We're about halfway through the year, and I'm continuing to wrestle with it. But a couple of things that I've learned about this word. One, God gave me this word not as a noun, but as a verb. To empty. And he also led me to Philippians chapter 2, where it says that Jesus didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped, to be clung to, but he emptied himself. And the word there from the Greek is kenosis. He emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant and becoming one of us. So, as I'm wrestling with empty, one of the things that we have been doing, Wendy and I have been doing, is going through our stuff and trying to empty some of the clutter in our house. And it's an amazing process. Any of you have done this? And I've been learning some lessons about decluttering. One is that it takes a lot of work. It does. You have to focus, you have to give your time, you have to give your energy. It takes time to go through your stuff and go through and talk about, okay, what are we going to get rid of? And then to actually get rid of it. Then you have to figure out what you're going to do with it. Do we have a garage sale? That seems like a lot of work. Do we take it to the thrift store? Okay, we can do that. But how are we going to get some of this stuff there? We have all of these things. Oh, should we put it on Pella Buy and Sell? I don't know. We could do that. So we've been doing all of these different things. And then there's the negotiations that happen about whether you're going to actually get rid of this or not. And we have all sorts of things. We have stuff that we hold on, I've determined, because of sentiment. No. I can't get rid of that. There's the stuff that we can't get rid of because of dreams. Someday, I'm going to wear that again. And there's things that we can't get rid of because of the utility factor or the perceived utility factor. I might use that someday. And then there's the stuff that we forget that we even have. And we leave it because it just takes work to get rid of. One of the things that I've learned in my relationship with Christ is that when you're in the circle dance with the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, life is just a continuous conversation. And it just happens. This dance happens every day, all day, every night. You're constantly in this thing. And when that happens, the most insignificant moments can be the moments in which Holy Spirit kind of does that flick on your heart. So here I brought show and tell. Wendy and I were going through a footstool. here a couple weeks ago. And in this footstool, we found this wonderful 1990s portable DVD player. And it's like, we didn't even know it was there. Forgot I even had it. Well, what are we going to do with this? So this is part of empty, right? What are we going to do with this? And I said to Wendy, well, let's take it to the lake. Maybe somebody would want to use it at the lake because we have this nice cabin down at the Lake of the Ozarks. And Wendy looked at me and she said, do you realize that when we want to get rid of our junk, we take it to the lake? And Holy Spirit, in that moment, just whispered in a little breath and said that there was this rich man. And his crops were huge. And he had all of this stuff. And he said to himself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tear down my barns and build bigger ones so I can store all my stuff. And when he had filled his barns with all of his stuff, he said, I'm going to sit back now and enjoy life. And at that moment, God said to him, you fool, because your life is required of you right now. Let's pray. God, teach us. Teach us in this dance. Your ways are not our ways. Your thoughts are not our thoughts. So we need you to teach us this dance of empty. Teach us in the name of Jesus. Amen. We're in Isaiah 58 this morning. If you need a Bible, we've got the rack right there by the sound booth back there. If you want to grab a Bible, feel free to do so. Isaiah chapter 58. If you're in one of the pew Bibles back there, in the room Bibles, it's page 735. 735. One of the things that I really appreciate about the auditorium community, Wendy and I have been coming to the auditorium since this place first opened. And we're actually, for those of you who may not have been here that long, we're kind of in the third, what Keith refers to as generation of the auditorium service, where we try things here, which is one of the things that's really cool. And one of the things, so through these three generations in the time that Wendy and I have been coming one of the things that I've come to really appreciate about you and this place and this group of believers is that we're all in process. And I love that. And we just acknowledge it. We're all in process. And this room has been gracious. You have been gracious to just accept that and embrace that. I mean, the fact that we have these different teachers, and every week a different teacher gets up, and all of us teachers are in process, believe me. And we know that, and you know that. So I appreciate your grace in allowing us to be in process. This morning, I bring that up because as I approach this message, I want you to know that I am approaching this in process. So please receive it in the Spirit, because I'm not pointing a finger without three of them pointing back at me. Okay? Now, I'm going to read, for those of you who are in Isaiah 58, if you've got the room Bible, we've got the New International Version. I actually want to read this in Eugene Peterson's The Message. So the words are going to be just a little bit different as Eugene Peterson paraphrases this and puts it in modern day English. And he begins in chapter 58, verse 1. God is speaking to Isaiah the prophet, and he says, shout, a full-throated shout. Hold nothing back, a trumpet blast shout. So God tells Isaiah, I want you to scream this at the top of your lungs. Now, why do you tell somebody to scream something? Well, it could be because you want to get somebody's attention. So God immediately is saying, I want you to get my people's attention. And it could also be because God knows they're not listening. So you have to scream to get their attention and to get this through. So, moving on through verse 5, point number 1 here is we have the wrong kind of fast. Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family, Jacob, with their sins. So God is saying, Isaiah, I want you to confront my people with their sins. Now, listen to this and see who you think this describes. They're busy with worship. They love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right living people. Law-abiding, God-honoring. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. Now, when I read this, I went, yeah, that's me. That's us. So they ask me, what's the right thing to do, God? And they love having me on their side. I love having God on my side. I love following him. But they also complain. Why do we fast and you don't look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice? Now, what's really interesting about this is that Kevin has been talking about fasting in the sanctuary here this past year. And in fact, as part of the Lenten season leading up to Easter, we talked about actually practicing the idea of fasting, where you go without something, and we do that as part of Lent. And in the day that Isaiah lived, this was a big thing. It was part of worship. And some of us have even made that a part of our walk with God, that we would fast, that we would choose not to eat, or we would choose to go without something so that we might experience something with God, that we might show our gratitude, that we might do without something so that we could receive something else. But God says, his people are saying, well, I fasted, God. I did this for you. I have gone to church. I have given my money. I have fasted. I have listened to Christian radio. I have watched, I double dip and go to both services on Sunday. But why are you not looking my way? We're doing this series, The Strength You Need, and all of us acknowledge that, yeah, I need strength. I want God to strengthen me. And myself included, all of us, I have to believe it. Sometimes we're going, God, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. I got the verses on the table back there, and I maybe even be memorizing a few, trying to quote them, but I'm just still not feeling the strength. Well, the interesting thing about this is that the strength verse for this week is in verse 11, and we're not even there yet. But we have to understand that this is part of a process. So the first part, God says, hey, you're great. You're looking good. Very religious, very spiritual. All right, doing all the great things that, make God-honoring, law-abiding, good folks. So why are you still complaining that you don't have strength? Why are you still complaining that I'm not looking your way? Here's why, verses 3 through 5. The bottom line on your fast days is profit. You drive your employees too hard. Yeah, you fast, but at the same time you bicker and you fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers off the ground. Do you think this is the kind of fast day I'm after? A day to show off humility, to put on a pious, long face, parade around solemnly in black? Do you call that fasting? A fast day that I, God, would like? And we can't go here without hearing Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount saying, yeah, on your fast days, you go around with a long face. Don't do it that way. You don't go around with a long face. So, oh, I'm fasting. Nothing for me today. I'm fasting. Forgive my stomach if it rumbles. Jesus said, is that kind of the fast you do? No. Jesus said, you know what? When you're fasting, don't let anybody know. Put on a smiley face. Make it between you and me and not you and everybody else. So what's interesting about that is here's Jesus 600-700 years after Isaiah complaining about the same thing. So obviously, when God told Isaiah to talk to my people about what they're doing with fasting, the same problem existed 600 years later. There had been no change. And what scares me is that maybe now, 2,000 years later, there has been no change. He transitions from the wrong kind of fast in verse 6 to the right kind of faith. This is the kind of fast day that I'm after. To break the chains of injustice. To get rid of exploitation in the workplace. To free the oppressed. To cancel debts. And that doesn't just mean financial debts. That means forgiveness for the debt of injury people have given us. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your homes, putting clothes on the shivering, ill-clad, being available to your own families. Do this, and the lights will turn on. And your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave your way. The God of glory will secure your passage. Then when you pray, God will answer. You call out for help, and here I am. See, what he's saying is that when we're doing all this religious stuff, it's really all about us. It's about my relationship with God and I'm fasting so that I might feel more, and what I might experience with you, and that my relationship with you, and it's all really about me. And about my spiritual life and my spiritual life. And God is saying, look, it's about others. And Jesus said, there are two great commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like it. Love others as you love yourself. And they go together. And in these two commandments are summed up the law and the prophets. Love God. Love others. And there's the cross. The focus is on others. And what happens in my life is I focus on the first and I ignore the second. What about my love of others? We're in, I think Roger referenced this a couple weeks ago. It's not really talked a lot about, but we're in sort of a 3-year cycle here at Third Church. The first year, which we're just coming out of, is about the kingdom within. We've talked about joy, we've talked about brokenness, we've talked about shame, we're talking about strength, we're talking about the kingdom within. Jesus' kingdom inside our own lives. In the second year, as we come into it this fall, we're going to be talking about the kingdom and community. So it starts within and then it floods outward. And then in the third year, it's the kingdom multiplication going out. And I just thought, this is a fascinating scripture because this is what God's saying, hey, yeah, you did the kingdom within. You're doing the kingdom within. I'm seeing you're law-abiding, you're good, you're trying to focus on your relationship with me, but you haven't progressed out of the kingdom within into the kingdom within community, in the kingdom multiplication. And if you're going to sit here and spin in the kingdom within, then you're not getting what I'm trying to get you to do. You are not progressing where I am leading you. We've got to move this thing along. So why don't I? Last week, 2 weeks ago, I was blogging through 2 Corinthians, and I came to 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 2. And Paul writes to the Corinthian believers, and he says to them, make room in your hearts for us. Why did he say that? Because Corinthian hearts were cluttered. It wasn't their storerooms that were cluttered. It was their hearts. There was no room for others. There was no room for Paul. There was no room for the believers in Jerusalem that were suffering terribly from famine and need. They were hungry and poor and struggling. And what Paul is saying, you got to make room in your heart for us. And when I read that, I realized another piece of empty. It was another Holy Spirit moment where Holy Spirit said, Tom, it's not just your storeroom that's cluttered. It's your heart. I need you to make room. And so how do we clutter our hearts? We clutter our hearts with our own suffering. Oh, God, I've got it so bad. My life is so awful. We clutter our hearts with our fears. Oh, God, I'm so afraid of what might happen. And God's kind of going, I told you not to be afraid. And yet you clutter your heart with fear. We clutter our hearts with worries. I'm just worried about this, and I'm worried about my kids, and I'm worried about that, and I'm worried about my community, I'm worried about my nation, and I'm worried about the future, and I'm worried about my 401k, and I'm worried about work, and I'm worried about... And Jesus is like going, I told you not to worry. I got this. And I clutter my heart with stuff. And it's not bad stuff, it's good stuff. But it gets cluttered. And when it gets cluttered with all of my stuff and all of my worries and all of my anxieties, and I'm so focused on everything that's going on with me and within, I have no room to even look out and see. Wasn't that Brian Jakubiak's testimony awesome last week for those of you who were here? And one of the things that I was impressed with was not just Brian's testimony. And in fact, I thought this place was packed last week. I thought, Keith, we should just invite Brian to give a little mini testimony every week. Maybe we'll pack the place out. But what I was struck with was the relationship between Roger and Brian. Did anybody else catch that as well? They didn't know each other a year ago. They meet on a Baja trip. And Roger shared with us last week that he has spent 64 hours plus in the car with Brian in the last 12 months. And I thought to myself, there's somebody who has made room in his heart for somebody else. And I thought to myself, who have I made room for to spend 64 of my hours investing in the last 12 months? We've got to declutter our hearts to make room for others. And we have to care for those on the margins. We have to care for those in need. We have to open our eyes and see the suffering. We have to follow Jesus where he leads. And if you think about where did he lead? He led with empty. I'm going to empty myself. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to go where there is nothing. I'm going to be born in a manger. And I'm going to live in this backwater town in Israel. And I'm going to literally have nothing. And I'm going to travel for 3 years. And basically live off donations. And I'm going to be with the sick. And I am going to be with the poor. And I am going to be with those who are hungry. And I am going to be with those who are in need. And I'm going to be with those who are weighed down with sin. I'm going to be with those that all of the religious people think are dirty and disgusting and awful and sinful. I am going to be with those who need me the most. That's the gospel. Do you realize that? Think about how God operates. My ways are not your ways. If you want to live, what do you have to do? Die. If you want to receive, you have to give. If you want fullness, you've got to empty. If we're going to embrace this, we also have to know that the Holy Spirit is going to blow us where he will, and it may be different for different ones of us. In the book, The Strength You Need, Morgan talks a lot about missionaries, about those who are willing to embrace the true fast, who are willing to take Isaiah 58. They went to the outskirts of the world, they went on missionaries. And we've got people even in our midst that have done that. I'm thinking about the Boschers right now. You know, I think about the Rosenbooms who went to South America a few years ago. I think about those who have heard God's call and said, yes, we're going to basically leave everything and go where God is calling us to go. That's awesome. But that may not be. Some of us are going to be called to go and work with the homeless and to work in the places where the margins are. I think about our own daughter, Taylor, is with us today, the work that she's done at the Catholic Worker in Des Moines, and I think about the amazing things that she's doing. It may look different for different one of us, every one of us. But we have to be willing to go where God is leading us as we declutter our own hearts and go where he leads, to focus on the other. And when we do that, verses 8 through 11, then when you pray, God will answer. You'll call out for help, and he'll say, here I am. If you get rid of unfair practices, quit blaming victims, if you quit gossiping about other people's sins, if you are generous with the hungry and start giving yourselves to the down and out, your lives will begin to glow in the darkness. Your shadowed lives will be bathed in sunlight. I will always show you where to go. And I love the way Peterson puts it. I will give you a full life in the emptiest of places. Firm muscles, strong bones. I will strengthen your frame. But I don't get to fullness. I don't get to guidance. I don't get to strength of frame unless I empty. Let's pray. Jesus, forgive me for my selfishness. Forgive me for being so focused on the kingdom within that I blind myself to those in need all around me. God, give me the grace to declutter my heart, to make room for you, the you that is in the prisoner, the you that is in the hospital, the you that is dying in hospice, the you that is hungry, the you that is homeless. For you are hungry. I haven't given you anything to eat. You're naked. I haven't clothed you. You've been sick and I haven't visited you. Forgive us all. And help us to learn, Lord, what your people seem not to have learned over the centuries. Amen.